Imagine you are standing at the edge of a great chasm. For years, perhaps a lifetime, you have worked to build a bridge across it. You drew the blueprints in the dead of night, fueled by coffee and a desperate vision. You mixed the mortar with your own sweat and tears, hoisting each stone into place with aching muscles and an unbreakable will. This bridge is not just stone and steel, it is a monument to your ambition, a testament to your resilience, a pathway to the life you have always sworn you deserved. The other side gleams with promise, the recognition, the love, the peace, the masterpiece completed. Just one final keystone remains. You hold it in your hands. It is heavy, perfect, the culmination of everything you have ever fought for. All you have to do is place it, but your hand trembles. Your gaze drifts from the gleaming future on the other side and falls to the detonator switch you've been carrying in your pocket all along. You don't remember picking it up. You certainly don't remember wiring the charges to the foundational pillars of your own magnificent creation. Yet, there it is. A small, unassuming button that promises a spectacular, fiery ruin. An inexplicably dark magnetism pulls your finger toward it. A whisper rises from the abyss below, a siren song of failure that sounds suspiciously like your own voice. It promises an end to the striving, an end to the pressure, an end to the terrifying vulnerability of standing on the precipice of your own success. To place the stone is to be seen, to be judged, to have something to lose. But to press the button is to return to the familiar, comfortable rubble of the starting point. What is this impulse? This suicidal allegiance to failure? This gravitational pull toward the very outcome you've spent your life trying to escape? This isn't a flaw in the blueprints. This is a flaw in the architect. And that architect is you. This bridge is your dream career, the one you abandon the moment you're on the verge of a breakthrough. It's the healthy relationship you poison with suspicion and doubt just when intimacy begins to feel real. It is the novel you delete, the canvas you slash, the life-changing opportunity you dismiss with a shrug of feigned indifference. You are both the builder and the demolitions expert, a walking paradox of creation and destruction. The hand that prays for victory is the same hand that places a tripwire a foot from the finish line. Why? Why would a rational being, armed with logic and desire, meticulously engineer their own downfall? Why does a part of us seem to work in direct opposition to our conscious goals? Like a ghost in our own machine, pulling levers and cutting wires in the dark. We tell ourselves stories to explain it away. It's procrastination, it's fear of failure, it's a lack of discipline. But these are just labels we stick on a wound we don't dare to inspect. They are shallow explanations for a chasm so deep it echoes with the oldest questions of the human soul. What if it's not a fear of failure at all? What if, in some terrifying, unexamined corner of your heart, you are petrified of your own power? What if the light at the end of the tunnel is more blindingly frightening than the familiar darkness you've grown accustomed to? The real question is not how to be more productive or how to stop procrastinating. The real, soul-shattering question is this: who is the saboteur? Is it a separate, malevolent entity hiding within you, or is it an integral, necessary part of who you are? What profound, hidden purpose does this act of self-destruction serve? We have been taught to fight this inner enemy, to silence its whispers and resist its pull. But what if that is the very reason we always lose? What if the only way to disarm the bomb is not to cut the wires, but to understand why the bomber chose to plant it in the first place? To truly begin this journey, we must stop looking at self-sabotage as a simple character flaw and start seeing it for what it is: a coded message from the deepest, most ancient part of your psyche. It is a distress signal from a part of you that knows something you don't, something about the very nature of your desires, and the terrifying cost of getting what you want. That coded message, buried beneath layers of shame and confusion, is not written in the language of modern productivity, but in the ancient script of survival. The saboteur within you is not a demon bent on your ruin. It is a primeval guardian, a deeply confused strategist operating on a single, terrifying logic. What is unknown is dangerous, and what is successful is, by its very nature, unknown. Its primary directive is not your happiness or your fulfillment, but your survival. And to this ancient part of your mind, survival means predictability. It means staying within the walls of the territory you know, even if that territory is a prison of misery. The glowing promise of the other side of that bridge, to your conscious mind, it's a paradise. To the saboteur, it's an uncharted wilderness filled with invisible predators. This internal conflict is what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the unbearable mental static that arises when your actions conflict with your deepest beliefs. You hold two ideas in your mind simultaneously. I am building this bridge to a better life, and a much older, deeper belief whispered into you by childhood, by society, by past failures. I am not worthy of crossing it. The strain of holding these two opposing thoughts is immense. Something has to give. And since the feeling of unworthiness is often the older, more foundational belief, the easiest way to resolve the dissonance is not to change the belief, but to change the reality. You blow up the bridge. In the deafening roar of its collapse, there is a sudden, quiet harmony. Your reality once again matches your core belief. See, I was right all along. I wasn't meant for that other side. In that moment of failure, there is a perverse sense of integrity. You have become tragically, horrifyingly whole again. This is the great war that Sigmund Freud saw raging within every human soul, the eternal battle between Eros and Thanatos. Eros, the life drive, is the builder in you. It is the force of connection, creation, ambition, and love. It is the part of you that dares to dream of a bridge. But fighting it at every turn is Thanatos, the death drive. It is not necessarily a desire for literal death, but a powerful, seductive pull toward stasis, toward silence, toward the inorganic peace of non-existence. It is the desire to return to the dust. Thanatos whispers that striving is pain, that consciousness is exhausting, and that failure is a form of profound rest. When you sabotage yourself, you are answering the call of Thanatos, choosing the silent simplicity of the rubble over the noisy, demanding, and exhausting responsibility of maintaining a masterpiece. Carl Jung saw this saboteur not as a drive, but as a person, your shadow. It is the disowned part of yourself, an invisible twin born in the darkness of your unconscious mind. Into this shadow, you cast everything you were taught to be ashamed of. Your anger, your vulnerability, your perceived weakness, your wild and untamable ambitions. The shadow is not evil. It is merely uninspected, and it is terrified. It sabotages your success because it fears that the bright light of the stage will expose it, and by extension, you, to ridicule and annihilation. It trips you before you can speak your truth because it remembers a time when your truth was punished. It poisons your relationships because it believes that to be truly seen is to be inevitably abandoned. It is a rogue bodyguard, convinced that the only way to protect you from being shot in the spotlight is to smash the spotlight itself. The philosophers knew this territory well. Kierkegaard called it the dizziness of freedom, that existential vertigo you feel when you realize the terrifying scope of your own potential. It's the fear not of falling from the great height, but of the sudden, inexplicable impulse to jump. Success represents an expansion of this freedom, an increase in choices and responsibilities that can feel utterly paralyzing. Failure, in its own dark way, is a cure for this dizziness. It simplifies. It reduces your options to one: start over. The Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky went even further. His Underground Man argues that human beings will sometimes knowingly and willfully choose suffering over happiness, simply to prove that they are not piano keys being played by the laws of nature and reason. They will choose destruction purely to exercise their free will. Is it possible your self-sabotage is a twisted declaration of independence? A desperate scream that says, "I will not be a predictable cog in the machine of success. I would rather be the author of my own glorious failure than a character in someone else's success story." This is the saboteur's tragic manifesto. To be in control of the crash is still a form of control. And for a psyche that feels powerless, the illusion of control is worth any price. So the saboteur is not a monster, but a guardian, an architect of ruin with the best of intentions. Acknowledge this. Feel the strange relief in it. But do not be seduced by this newfound understanding into a state of passive acceptance, because the consequences of this misguided protection are catastrophic, silently building invisible prisons that shape not just your life, but the very world you perceive. The act of blowing up the bridge is not a single, isolated event, it is a seed. And from that seed, a forest of failure grows until it darkens your entire world. Every time you heed the saboteur's call, every time you procrastinate on the application, pick a fight in the happy relationship, or shrink from the spotlight, you are doing more than just avoiding a challenge. You are performing a neurological ritual. With each repetition, you carve a pathway in your brain, deepening a groove of retreat. The axiom of neuroscience is neurons that fire together, wire together. The first time you sabotaged yourself, it was a conscious, painful choice. The 100th time, it is a reflex. The 1000th time, it is your identity. The path to failure becomes so well worn that it feels like the only path that exists. A superhighway of self-destruction running directly through the center of your mind, while the road to success remains a barely visible, overgrown trail. Your brain, in its relentless efficiency, automates your downfall. This neurological wiring gives birth to a powerful accomplice: your own perception. You develop what psychologists call a confirmation bias, a distorted lens that filters all of reality. Your brain becomes a crooked detective, sent out with one mission: to find evidence that confirms your deepest, negative belief about yourself. When you succeed, your mind dismisses it as a fluke, an anomaly, a lucky break that means nothing. But when you fail, especially when you engineer that failure, your mind seizes upon it. It holds it up as glistening, irrefutable proof. You see, it whispers with the satisfaction of a scientist whose grim hypothesis has been proven correct. This is who you really are. You build a museum of your own inadequacies, curating every mistake and misstep, while leaving your triumphs to rot in an unvisited warehouse. This is the amygdala hijack in slow motion. The amygdala, the brain's ancient fear center, is the saboteur's throne room. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason and long-term planning, is the builder's workshop. When you approach the edge of your comfort zone, the verge of success, the amygdala screams danger. It floods your system with cortisol and norepinephrine, the hormones of fear and stress. It effectively cuts the power to your rational brain. You can no longer think clearly, plan, or access your higher wisdom. All you can feel is the overwhelming primal urge to flee, to retreat to safety. And what is safety? The familiar territory of not enough. The comfortable misery you know. You are physiologically manipulated by your own biology to choose ruin, again and again. Our culture becomes the invisible prison guard, reinforcing these patterns from the outside. We romanticize the tragic artist, the flawed genius, the suffering poet. We are sold a seductive lie that greatness is born only from pain, that stability is the enemy of depth. Your saboteur latches onto these narratives, giving its destructive impulses a noble, artistic justification. I must remain in turmoil, it rationalizes. For my chaos is the source of my creativity. It's a beautiful lie that keeps you chained to the floor. Society also thrives on your sense of inadequacy. A multi-trillion-dollar market exists to convince you that you are fundamentally broken, and that the cure lies just outside of yourself, in a product, a status, a pill. This constant external messaging validates the saboteur's core premise. You are not, and will never be, enough. The final, and most devastating, consequence is a state of being called learned helplessness. After enough bridges have been blown up, after enough goals have been torpedoed, the builder in you simply gives up. You learn from the repeated, self-inflicted trauma that your efforts are futile, so you stop trying. You no longer even walk to the chasm. You don't draw the blueprints. The dream of the other side fades into an impossible fantasy. This is the saboteur's ultimate victory, not just the destruction of your work, but the annihilation of your will to even begin. The silence is deafening. It is the silence of a life unlived, of potential unfulfilled, of a soul that has consented to its own captivity. You are now trapped in a prison whose walls are your own neural pathways, whose bars are your own beliefs, and whose guards are the comforting lies whispered by your culture. Willpower is useless here. Positive affirmations feel like lies. Fighting has only made you more tired. So how do you escape a prison when you are also the warden? You must stop trying to smash the walls and start walking toward the part of you that holds the key. The escape begins with a realization so counterintuitive it will feel like madness. The way out of this prison is not to fight the warden. It is to invite him to sit down for a conversation. For your entire life, you have treated this saboteur as your enemy. You have tried to starve it with discipline, silence it with positive thinking, and overpower it with sheer willpower. And for your entire life, you have failed. You have failed because your saboteur feeds on conflict. Your resistance is its nourishment. It expects a battle, and in a battle against your own deepest survival instincts, you will always lose. The only way to win is to refuse to fight. Lay down your arms. The key you are searching for is not a weapon to be wielded against the dark. It is an invitation to bring the dark into the light. Your first move is an act of radical compassion. Turn your attention inward to that cowering, destructive part of you. See it not as a monster, but as a terrified child or a traumatized soldier. Huddled in the basement of your psyche, convinced the world above is about to end. And then, do the unthinkable. Thank it. Say out loud or in the quiet of your mind, "Thank you for trying to protect me. Thank you for working so hard to keep me safe from what you perceive as danger." This act is a pattern interrupt of the highest order. It disarms the entire conflict. The saboteur, expecting a familiar barrage of shame and anger, is met with gratitude. For the first time, its intention, not its action, is being seen. In this moment of compassionate acknowledgement, the war footing dissolves, and a space for negotiation opens. You are no longer a victim fighting a monster. You have become a diplomat engaging with a fearful foreign power within your own borders. Once the truce is called, you begin the interrogation. Not an interrogation of a criminal, but the gentle, curious questioning of a wise therapist. You must become the calm, rational, prefrontal cortex that your amygdala has been screaming over for years. When you feel the pull of sabotage, the urge to quit, to hide, to destroy, you pause, you take a breath, and you ask it questions. What, specifically, are you afraid will happen if I finish this project? What is the absolute worst-case scenario you are trying to prevent? What past memory of pain or humiliation does this current situation remind you of? You must listen for the answer not in words, but in feelings, in images, in bodily sensations. By giving the amorphous terror a name and a story, you drag it from the untamed wilderness of the amygdala into the structured, logical world of the conscious mind. Fear thrives in the abstract. It withers under the focused light of specific inquiry. The great Stoic philosophers knew this. Marcus Aurelius and Seneca did not run from fear. They practiced premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They would sit and actively imagine the worst things that could happen, losing their wealth, their status, their loved ones. By confronting the phantom in their minds, they inoculated themselves against its power in reality. They were, in essence, having a scheduled, strategic meeting with their inner saboteur, hearing out its worst fears and robbing them of their shock value. This is what you must learn to do. You are not trying to prove the fear wrong. You are simply allowing it to be heard, to be witnessed. And often, once a fear is truly witnessed, it begins to lose its authority. This process allows for the most profound shift of all. You can redefine the very meaning of failure. You can adopt the mindset of what the writer Nassim Nicholas Taleb calls anti-fragility. The fragile breaks under stress. The resilient withstands stress. But the antifragile gets stronger from stress. You can reframe every setback, every mistake, every act of sabotage not as a verdict on your worth, but as a data point. It's a stress test for your bridge. A failed launch is not proof you are an imposter. It is invaluable information about what your audience wants. A difficult conversation is not a sign of a doomed relationship. It's a crucible that can forge deeper intimacy. When failure becomes fuel, the saboteur's primary weapon is transformed into your greatest tool for growth. It can no longer threaten you with ruin, because ruin is now the raw material for your resurrection. You are no longer a prisoner. You are no longer a victim. You have become the leader of your own inner world. You have learned to listen to the whispers of your shadow, to honor its misguided attempts to protect you, and to gently, firmly take back control. You are teaching it that the light is not as dangerous as it seems. You are showing it, through small, courageous acts, that you are capable of handling both success and failure. You have learned to speak the saboteur's language, transforming your greatest adversary into a powerful, if twitchy, ally. But what happens when the internal war is truly over? What new landscape is revealed when the smoke of this lifelong battle finally clears? The truth of who you are was never found in the fighting, but in the profound, expansive peace that follows. And in that quiet, newfound space, once the frantic shouting of the saboteur has subsided into the manageable whisper of a respected advisor, you are finally able to hear the one thing its relentless noise was designed to drown out. It is not silence. It is a deep, resonant hum. It is the sound of a vast, dormant engine. It is the terrifying, thunderous, and beautiful roar of your own authentic power, waiting to be unleashed. And with this sound comes the final, most powerful realization. The one that recontextualizes every battle you have ever fought with yourself. Here is the truth that changes everything. The builder and the saboteur are not enemies. They are not even two separate forces. They are two faces of the exact same drive. The most fundamental impulse of all conscious beings, the drive to create and maintain an identity. All this time, you thought the conflict was between your desire for success and your fear of failure. You were wrong. The conflict has always been between the identity you currently have and the identity you would have to adopt in order to succeed. Your self-sabotage is an identity immune response. Your psyche has built a story of who you are, constructed from your past, your wounds, and your adaptations. This identity, I am a person who struggles. I am the overlooked one. I am the one who is not quite good enough, is, for all its pain, stable. It is known, it is solid. When the builder in you gets close to finishing that bridge, your psyche perceives the imminent success not as a victory, but as a virus. The new identity, I am a person who is successful, I am worthy of love, I am capable and powerful, is a foreign entity. And so the saboteur, the loyal guardian of your current self, unleashes the immune response. It attacks the new reality to protect the integrity of the old one. It burns the bridge, not to keep you from paradise, but to keep you from ceasing to be who you have always known yourself to be. The ultimate fear was never failure, it was ego death. Suddenly, it all makes sense. That strange relief you felt in the ashes of your own creation. It was the comfort of returning to the familiar self, of coming home to the identity you knew how to perform. The terrifying anxiety that choked you at the edge of victory. That was the vertigo of looking into an identity void. The terror of letting go of the you have always been, with no guarantee of who you might become on the other side. You were a caterpillar on the verge of entering the chrysalis, and your saboteur was screaming that to dissolve into that primordial goo is to die. And it was right. That version of you must die for the next to be born. Willpower was always useless because you were asking your very sense of self to commit suicide with no explanation. No identity will ever vote for its own annihilation. But you are not a caterpillar, subject to the blind forces of instinct. You are a conscious creator. You can understand that this dissolution is not an end, but a transfiguration. This is the secret the great mystics and artists have always known. The snake must shed its skin to grow. A star must collapse under its own gravity to be reborn as a stellar nebula. True creation is never an act of simple addition. It is always an act of transformation, and transformation requires a sacrifice. You must be willing to consciously place the identity you have outgrown upon an altar and let it burn. This is the work now. It is no longer a battle. It is a ceremony. The question is no longer, how do I stop sabotaging myself? But a far more profound and terrifying one. Who am I willing to become? This is the journey we explore in this space, the excavation of abandoned worlds, both outside of us and within. We look into the ruins of what was like a forgotten theme park of the soul, to understand the story of why it was left behind and what new life can be built upon its foundations. You stand now with the full, awesome, and terrifying responsibility of your own becoming. You see the chasm, the bridge, the builder, and the saboteur for what they are: a stage, a script, and a cast of characters for the epic drama of your own evolution. The pieces are all in your hands. You can rebuild the same bridge to the same shore, or you can use the stones to build a vessel and sail into an ocean you never knew existed. The choice was always yours. The bridge was never the point. The chasm was never the enemy. It was all a crucible for the only question that has ever mattered: can you let go of the architect you were, to finally become the one the universe has been waiting for?